The Great Hall was bigger than anything Daniel Carter had ever seen. It stretched so far that he could not see the walls on either side. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually floated inside the building. Lights of every color danced in the air, and thousands of alien beings filled the massive space. Daniel stood near the back of the hall, trying to make himself small. He was the only human here. Earth had only been discovered by the galactic community 3 years ago, and humans were still considered newcomers. Most of the aliens did not even look at him. To them, he was nothing important. The ceremony had been going on for 3 days now. One by one, each species was called forward to receive their inheritance from the ancient architects. These architects had lived millions of years ago. They had traveled across the galaxy and created life on thousands of worlds. Before they disappeared, they left behind gifts for each species they had made. Today was the day those gifts were finally being given out. Daniel watched as a tall, blue-skinned Valaxian walked to the center of the hall. The Valaxians were one of the most respected species in the galaxy. They stood 8 feet tall and had large, dark eyes that seemed to look right through you. A glowing crystal orb floated at the center of the hall. It pulsed with soft light as the Valaxian approached. The orb scanned the alien's body, reading its genetic code. Then a voice spoke, ancient and powerful, coming from everywhere at once. To the children of Vilax, we grant the gift of deep telepathy. You shall hear the thoughts of others and speak without words across the void of space. The Valaxians in the crowd cheered. Their representative bowed low and returned to his people, now carrying an incredible power that would make his species even more formidable. Next came the Kroth. These beings looked like massive insects, with hard shells covering their bodies and 4 powerful arms. The orb scanned them and spoke again. To the children of Kroth, we grant bodies that can survive the vacuum of space. You shall walk among the stars without protection, breathing the void itself. More cheering. The Kroth clicked their mandibles together in celebration. They had just become nearly impossible to kill in space combat. Daniel felt his stomach tighten as species after species received amazing gifts. The Seraphim, beings made of pure light, were given the ability to turn solar radiation into weapons. The Zorathi, a warlike reptilian race, received enhanced strength and speed. The Fanari were granted the ability to regenerate any wound within seconds. Each gift was more impressive than the last. Each species walked away with something that elevated them above what they had been before. Lisa Monroe, Daniel's communications officer, stood beside him. She was a small woman with short brown hair and sharp eyes. She had come with him as support, though neither of them knew what to expect. How many more before us? She whispered. Daniel checked his datapad. We are last. Lisa frowned. Last? Out of all these species? Humans were the most recent discovery. We go in order of first contact with the architects. They waited for 2 more hours. Daniel's legs grew tired. His back ached. The aliens around him did not seem to notice the time passing. Many of them could stand for days without discomfort. Finally, the ancient voice spoke his name. Daniel Carter of Earth, representative of humanity. Come forward. The crowd shifted. Thousands of alien eyes turned to look at him. Daniel felt very small and very alone as he walked toward the glowing orb. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. He reached the center of the hall and stood before the crystal. Up close, it was beautiful. Light swirled inside it like a tiny galaxy. Daniel could feel warmth coming from it, along with something else. Something old and powerful. The orb pulsed. A beam of light washed over Daniel, scanning him from head to toe. He felt it reading his DNA, examining every part of what made him human. Then the ancient voice spoke. To the children of Earth, we grant the full spectrum of mortal experience. We give them unfiltered sensation and the burden of finite existence. Daniel blinked. He waited for more. There had to be more, but there was nothing else. The orb's light faded, and the hall fell completely silent. Then someone laughed. It started as a single sound, coming from the Zorthi section. Ambassador Vex, a large reptile with green scales and yellow eyes, was shaking with amusement. His laughter grew louder and louder. Others joined in. The Croth made clicking sounds that passed for laughter among their kind. The Fenari whistled in amusement. Even some of the dignified Valaxians were shaking their heads and smiling. Daniel stood frozen in the center of the hall, surrounded by the laughter of 1,000 alien species. Mortality? Ambassador Vex called out. The architects gave the humans death? He laughed again. What a wonderful joke. High Priestess Myra of the Valaxians spoke with false pity in her voice. Poor creatures. They were given nothing. Less than nothing. They were given the ability to suffer and die. Daniel's face burned with shame. He looked at the crystal orb, hoping for some explanation. A holographic display flickered to life, showing more details about humanity's inheritance. Enhanced pain sensitivity, accelerated aging compared to most species, vulnerability to radiation, temperature extremes, disease, and physical injury, limited lifespan, high mortality rate. The list went on and on. Every weakness of the human body was displayed for all to see. They cannot survive in space without protection, a Croth observer noted. They cannot heal their wounds quickly. They cannot even communicate without making sounds with their mouths. He made a clicking sound of disgust. The architects must have been very tired when they created this species. More laughter filled the hall. Daniel turned and walked back to Lisa. He kept his head high, though inside he wanted to disappear. Lisa took his arm and guided him toward the exit. Ignore them, she whispered. They do not understand. But Daniel was not sure there was anything to understand. Humanity had traveled across the stars, hoping to find a place among the great species of the galaxy. Instead, they had discovered that they were the weakest of all. The architects had given everyone else powers and abilities beyond imagination. They had given humans nothing but the ability to feel pain and die. As they left the great hall, Daniel could still hear the laughter echoing behind them. It followed them all the way back to their ship, ringing in his ears like a curse. Humanity was now the laughingstock of the galaxy, and Daniel had no idea how they would ever overcome that. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, every planet, every station, every ship knew about the human inheritance, and everyone was laughing. Daniel sat in the mess hall of the colony ship Wanderer, staring at a screen that showed an alien comedy program. A Fenari comedian was on stage, telling jokes about humans. What do you call a human in space? The comedian asked. He paused for effect. A liability. The audience roared with laughter. Daniel turned off the screen. He had seen enough. Captain Kevin Brooks walked into the mess hall and sat down across from Daniel. Kevin was a tall man in his 50s, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had commanded the Wanderer for 10 years, guiding humanity's first colony ship through the unknown reaches of space. I just got off a call with the Valaxian Trade Council, Kevin said. They canceled our mining agreement. Daniel closed his eyes. Did they give a reason? They said they do not want to risk their equipment with a species that might break it. Kevin's voice was bitter. They think we are too fragile to operate heavy machinery. This was the third agreement canceled this week. The Croth had withdrawn their offer to share navigation data. The Seraphim had stopped answering diplomatic messages entirely. And now the Valaxians were cutting off trade. Amanda Price, the ship's chief scientist, joined them at the table. She was a young woman with bright red hair and glasses that she constantly pushed up her nose. Amanda had spent the last 2 weeks studying the architect's inscription, hoping to find something everyone had missed. "I finished my analysis," she said. She did not look happy. "And?" Kevin asked. "It is exactly what it says. Enhanced nerve sensitivity means we feel pain more intensely than any other species. Our cells age faster. We are vulnerable to almost every environmental danger. The architects literally designed us to experience suffering at a higher level than anyone else in the galaxy." Kevin slammed his hand on the table. "Then why? Why would they do that to us?" Amanda shook her head. "I do not know. The architects were brilliant engineers. They created life across thousands of worlds. Everything they did had a purpose. But I cannot find any purpose in this." Daniel thought about the inscription again. The words had been burned into his memory. The full spectrum of mortal experience. Unfiltered sensation. What did that even mean? Before he could speak, an alarm sounded throughout the ship. Red lights flashed along the corridor. Chris Palmer's voice came over the intercom. Chris was the ship's security chief, a large man with a shaved head and a scar across his chin. "Captain, we have incoming Zarathi vessels. 3 warships heading directly for us." Kevin jumped to his feet. "Battle stations. Everyone to their posts." Daniel ran to the bridge with the others. Through the main view screen, he could see the Zarathi ships approaching. They were sleek and deadly, built for combat. Each one was 5 times the size of the Wanderer. "They are hailing us," Lisa reported from her communication station. "Put them through," Kevin ordered. Ambassador Vex appeared on the screen. The same Zarathi who had laughed loudest at Daniel's inheritance ceremony. His yellow eyes gleamed with amusement. "Human vessel," Vex said. "You are in Zarathi space. This territory now belongs to the Empire." Kevin's jaw tightened. This system was designated as neutral territory by the Galactic Council. "You have no claim here." Vex laughed. "The Galactic Council protects those who can protect themselves. You humans cannot. Your pathetic inheritance proved that." He leaned closer to the camera. "Leave this system now, or we will destroy you. We both know you cannot fight us." The communication ended. Daniel looked at the tactical display. The Zarathi ships were powering up their weapons. The Wanderer had basic defenses, but nothing that could stand against 3 warships. "We could try to run," Chris suggested. "Our engines might be fast enough to reach the jump point before they catch us." "No," Kevin said quietly. "If we run now, they will chase us forever. Every system we visit, every planet we try to settle, they will be there. They think we are weak. They think we are prey. Are they wrong?" Amanda asked softly. No one answered. In the end, they ran. There was no other choice. The Wanderer fled through space with Zarathi weapons fire lighting up the darkness behind them. They took several hits before reaching the jump point. 3 crew members were injured. A section of the lower deck was exposed to vacuum, but they survived. Later, Daniel sat alone in his quarters, looking out at the stars. Everything he had believed about humanity's future was falling apart. They had dreamed of exploring the galaxy, of standing alongside the great civilizations that rule the cosmos. Instead, they were running away, hiding, hoping that no one would notice them. His datapad buzzed. A message from an unknown source. Daniel opened it carefully. The sender was listed as Counselor Vex, a name he did not recognize. The message was short. "I have studied the architects for 200 years. Your inheritance is not what you think it is. If you want to understand the truth, meet me at Station Omega in 3 days. Come alone." Daniel stared at the message for a long time. It was probably a trap. The Zarathi or some other species trying to capture a human for study or sport. But what if it was real? What if someone actually knew something about the inheritance that everyone else had missed? He thought about the laughter in the Great Hall. He thought about Ambassador Vex's sneering face. He thought about the crew members lying in the medical bay, injured because humanity was too weak to defend itself. If there was even a small chance that this Council of Vex had answers, Daniel had to take it. He began making preparations. He did not tell Kevin or the others. They would try to stop him, and he could not let that happen. Humanity needed hope, and right now, this mysterious message was the only hope they had. 3 days later, Daniel boarded a small shuttle and headed for Station Omega. He did not know what he would find there. He did not know if he would survive, but he was done running. Whatever the truth was about humanity's inheritance, he was going to find it. Even if it killed him, the stars stretched out before him, cold and indifferent. Somewhere out there, aliens were still laughing at humanity. Daniel promised himself that one day, that laughter would stop. One day, they would understand that humans were not prey. He just had to find out how. Station Omega was old. Very old. It floated in a forgotten corner of space, far from any trade routes or inhabited worlds. Rust covered its outer hull, and only a few lights flickered in its windows. Daniel docked his shuttle carefully. The station systems were barely functioning. He wondered how anyone could live here. He walked through empty corridors, following the directions from the mysterious message. The air was cold and smelled of dust. His footsteps echoed in the silence. Finally, he reached a large chamber filled with books. Actual paper books, something Daniel had rarely seen. They lined the walls from floor to ceiling, thousands of them. In the center of the room sat an ancient Velashan. Counselor. Vex was unlike any Velexian Daniel had met before. His blue skin had faded to pale gray with age. His large eyes were cloudy but still sharp. He wore simple robes and sat in a chair that looked as old as he was. "You came," Vex said. His voice was weak but clear. Most would not have risked it. Daniel stopped a few feet away. "Your message said you know something about our inheritance. Is that true?" Vex smiled slowly. "I have studied the architects for over 200 years. I have read texts that most species have forgotten exist. And yes, I know something about what was given to your people." "Then tell me," Daniel said. "Tell me why they cursed us." "Cursed you?" Vex laughed softly. "Is that what you believe? That the architects, the greatest engineers in galactic history, made a mistake with your species? They gave us pain and death while everyone else got powers." Vex shook his head. "You see only what is on the surface. You do not understand what lies beneath." He gestured to a chair. "Sit, let me tell you a story." Daniel sat down, though every muscle in his body was tense. Vex closed his eyes for a moment, then began speaking. "The architects seeded life across the galaxy millions of years ago. They created thousands of species, each one designed for a specific purpose. But they faced a problem. How do you create a species that can truly grow? That can adapt to any challenge? That can become more than what it was designed to be?" "I do not understand," Daniel said. "Every gift has a limit," Vex explained. "My people, the Velaxians, were given telepathy. It is a wonderful ability, but it has a ceiling. We can only read thoughts within a certain range. We cannot grow beyond that limit. The architects gave us a finished product. And humans?" Vex's cloudy eyes seemed to brighten. "Humans were given something very different. You were given access. Access to what? To the full range of existence. Think about what your inheritance actually means. Enhanced sensation. Unfiltered experience. You feel everything at maximum intensity. Pain? Yes. Fear? Yes. But also determination, courage, hope. Every emotion, every sensation, every experience is amplified for your species." Daniel frowned. "That sounds like a weakness, not a strength." Only if you do not understand how growth works. Dex leaned forward. Adaptation requires pressure. A muscle grows stronger when it is stressed. A mind grows sharper when it faces challenges. The architects understood this better than anyone. So they gave us pressure? They gave you unlimited pressure and unlimited response. Every other species has filters that protect them from extreme experiences. Those filters also limit how much they can grow. Humans have no filters. You experience everything fully, which means you can adapt to everything fully. Daniel thought about this. But we die. We age. We break so easily. You break, Dex agreed. And then you heal. And when you heal, you become stronger than before. That is what the architects gave you. Not immunity to harm, but the ability to transform harm into strength. Something stirred in Daniel's memory. A report he had received just before leaving the Wanderer. Lieutenant Nancy Webb and her patrol ship had been ambushed by Zorathi raiders. 3 enemy ships against 1 small human vessel. They should have been destroyed in minutes. Instead, they had fought for 6 hours. Nancy had lost an arm in the battle. She had continued fighting with one hand while bleeding heavily. Her crew had taken injuries that would have killed most species. They had kept fighting anyway. When rescue ships finally arrived, the Zorathi vessels were drifting wrecks. The human ship was barely holding together, but it was still operational. And Nancy was still giving orders. "I received a report," Daniel said slowly, "about a battle. Our people should have died. But they did not. They kept fighting through injuries that should have been impossible to survive." Dex nodded. The pain did not break them. It focused them, sharpened them, made them more determined to survive. That is the human gift. You were designed to use suffering as fuel. But why? Daniel asked. Why would the architects create a species like that? Dex was quiet for a long moment. Because they knew that the galaxy would face challenges they could not predict. They needed a species that could grow without limits. A species that could face any obstacle and become stronger for it. Every other species they created was designed to fill a specific role. Humans were designed to fill every role. To adapt to anything. To become whatever they needed to become. Daniel stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars glittered in the endless darkness. He thought about his people, scattered across a handful of colony ships, mocked by the entire galaxy. If this is true, he said, then why has no one realized it before? Because it only becomes visible under extreme circumstances, Dex replied. Your species is still young. You have not yet faced the kind of pressure that reveals your true nature. But you will. And when you do, the galaxy will finally understand what the architects created. Daniel turned back to the old Valaxian. How do I prove this? How do I show the others? Dex smiled sadly. You cannot prove it with words. You can only prove it with actions. Your people must face a challenge that seems impossible. They must push through pain and fear and despair. And they must not break. The Zorathi are already preparing to attack our colonies. They think we are weak. Then let them attack, Dex said, and show them what humanity really is. Daniel stayed with Counselor Dex for 2 more days, learning everything the old scholar knew about the architects and their designs. When he finally left, his mind was racing with possibilities. The message was clear. Humanity had not been given a curse. They had been given a gift that only appeared through struggle. The more they suffered, the stronger they became. The more pressure they faced, the more they could adapt. As his shuttle carried him back toward the Wanderer, Daniel began making plans. The Zorathi thought humans were easy prey. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The laughter of the galaxy still echoed in Daniel's memory. But now it sounded different. Now it sounded like the ignorance of those who had not yet seen what humanity could do. Soon, they would all see. Daniel returned to the Wanderer with fire in his eyes. He called an emergency meeting with Captain Kevin Brooks and the rest of the senior staff. They gathered in the main conference room, confused and worried. "Where have you been?" Kevin demanded. "You disappeared for 5 days without telling anyone." "I found answers," Daniel said. He told them everything. About Counselor Vex, about the true nature of humanity's inheritance, about the hidden power that lay dormant within them. When he finished, the room was silent. Chris Palmer was the first to speak. "So you are saying that our weakness is actually our strength? That getting hurt makes us stronger?" "Not exactly," Daniel replied. "I am saying that we have no limits. Every other species was designed with filters that protect them, but also restrict them. We have no filters. We experience everything at full intensity, which means we can adapt to everything at full intensity." Amanda pushed her glasses up her nose. "That matches some of the data I have been collecting. Human neuroplasticity is off the charts compared to other species. Our brains can rewire themselves much faster than anyone else's. I always thought it was a flaw in our design. But if what you are saying is true, it is actually our greatest advantage." "It is a nice theory," Kevin said slowly. "But how do we prove it? How do we know this is not just wishful thinking?" "We test it," Daniel said. "We push ourselves harder than we have ever been pushed before. And we see what happens." Over the next 2 weeks, the Wanderer became a testing ground for human potential. Chris designed training exercises that seemed cruel at first glance. He put volunteers through physical challenges that should have broken them. He exposed them to stress levels that would have driven most species insane. The results were astonishing. When pushed past what should have been their breaking points, the human volunteers did not break. Instead, something changed in them. Their thinking became clearer. Their reactions became faster. Their determination became unshakable. Amanda documented everything with scientific precision. "I have never seen anything like this," she reported to the senior staff. "Under extreme stress, human bodies release a cascade of chemicals that enhance every physical and mental function. Pain triggers focus. Fear triggers courage. Despair triggers determination. It is like our entire biology is designed to transform negative experiences into positive outcomes." The old Earth texts had a name for part of this phenomenon. They called it second wind. But what Amanda was observing went far beyond that. It was a complete transformation that activated under pressure. News of the experiment spread through the ship. More volunteers stepped forward. People who had spent their whole lives feeling inferior to aliens suddenly wanted to discover what they were, truly capable of. Nancy Webb, the lieutenant who had survived the impossible battle against the Zorathi, became a symbol of this new understanding. She had regrown her lost arm using advanced medical technology, but the scars of that battle remained visible. She wore them with pride now. "I remember what it felt like," she told a group of younger crew members. "The pain was incredible. Every nerve in my body was screaming. But instead of shutting down, my mind got sharper. I could see things I had never seen before. React faster than I ever thought possible. The pain was like fuel for a fire I did not know I had." Daniel watched these changes with growing hope. But he knew that laboratory tests and training exercises were not enough. To truly prove what humanity was capable of, they needed a real challenge. A challenge that seemed impossible. The Zorathi Empire gave them exactly what they needed. Reports came in from human scouts. The Zorathi were massing a massive fleet near the colony of New Providence. Over 200 warships. An invasion force of 300,000 warriors. They planned to wipe out the colony completely and use it as a base for further attacks against humanity. Kevin called a war council. The numbers were grim. "We have 37 ships that can make it to New Providence in time," he said, "and about 12,000 ground troops. Against their numbers, we do not stand a chance. Standard tactical analysis suggests we should evacuate," Chris added. "Save who we can and abandon the colony." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what evacuation meant. Surrender. Proof that humanity was exactly as weak as everyone thought. Daniel stood up. "No." Kevin looked at him. "No, we do not run. We stand and fight. With 37 ships against 200? With 12,000 troops against 300,000? Kevin shook his head. "That is suicide?" "Maybe," Daniel said. "Or maybe it is exactly the kind of pressure we need to show what we really are." He looked around the room. "Every test we have run shows the same thing. We get stronger when things get harder. Our ancestors survived ice ages and famines and wars that should have destroyed them. They did not survive because they were strong. They survived because they refused to give up." Amanda spoke up. "The data supports him. Human performance enhancement peaks when the situation seems most desperate. If there is ever a time when our inheritance will manifest fully, it will be in a battle like this." Chris crossed his arms. "And if we are wrong? If we lose?" "Then we lose," Daniel said. "But we lose fighting. We lose showing the galaxy that humans do not run. We do not hide. We do not accept being prey." He paused. "And if we win, even against impossible odds, we change everything. No one will ever laugh at us again." The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Nancy Webb stood up. "I will fight," she said simply. "I have seen what we can do when pushed to the limit. I believe in this." One by one, others stood as well. Amanda, Chris, Lisa, even Captain Kevin, though his face was troubled. "This could be the end of humanity in this region of space," Kevin said quietly. "If we fail here, there may be no one left to try again." "Or it could be the beginning," Daniel replied. "The moment when humanity finally wakes up to what it really is." Kevin took a deep breath. Then he nodded. "Very well. We go to New Providence. We face the Zorthi, and we show the galaxy what humans are made of." The fleet began its journey the next day. 37 small ships against an empire. 12,000 humans against an army. The odds were hopeless by any calculation, but as the star streak passed, Daniel felt something new in the air. Not fear, though fear was there. Not confidence, though that was growing. It was something else. Something he had only felt hints of before. It was humanity waking up. Finally understanding what it had always been capable of. Finally ready to prove that the architects had not made a mistake. The laughter of the galaxy was about to turn into silence. The Battle of New Providence began on a cold morning in space. Daniel watched from the bridge of the Wanderer as the Zorthi fleet emerged from hyperspace. 217 warships, each one bristling with weapons. Behind them came the transport vessels carrying 300,000 Zorthi warriors, ready to claim the colony. Against them stood 37 human ships and 12,000 defenders on the planet below. Ambassador Vex's face appeared on the communication screen. His yellow eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Humans," he said. "You actually came. I expected you to run like the cowards you are." Captain Kevin Brooks stood tall. "We are done running." Vex laughed. "Then you are done living. Your fragile bodies will make excellent trophies. Perhaps I will mount your skulls in my hall as a reminder of what happens to weak species who challenge the Empire." The transmission ended. "All ships," Kevin said calmly, "begin attack pattern Delta." The human fleet surged forward. They were outnumbered almost 6-1. Their ships were smaller, their weapons weaker, their armor thinner. By every calculation, They should have been destroyed in the first hour. The first day proved those calculations wrong. Human pilots flew with a precision that shocked the Zorathi commanders. They dodged weapons fire that should have been unavoidable. They found gaps in enemy formations that should not have existed. When their ships took damage, they kept fighting. When their systems failed, they found ways to make them work anyway. By sunset on New Providence, 12 human ships were gone. But so were 47 Zorathi warships. On the ground, the story was the same. Zorathi troops landed expecting easy victories. Instead, they found humans who refused to die. Soldiers with terrible wounds kept shooting. Officers with broken bones kept leading. The pain that should have stopped them seemed to make them fight harder. Private Maria Santos held a defensive position for 9 hours with a piece of shrapnel in her leg. She killed 63 Zorathi warriors before reinforcements arrived. When they found her, she was still shooting. Sergeant Paul Henderson led a counterattack against a Zorathi command post with only 20 soldiers. They were supposed to be a distraction while the main force escaped. Instead, they took the command post and held it for 3 days. The Zorathi had never seen anything like it. By the third day, Ambassador Vex was no longer laughing. By the 5th day, he was requesting reinforcements from the Empire. By the 7th day, he was requesting permission to retreat. Permission was denied. The Zorathi Emperor had been watching the battle with growing disbelief. He ordered Vex to finish the humans at any cost. Vex threw everything he had at New Providence. Wave after wave of attacks. Bombardments from orbit. Ground assaults that should have overwhelmed the defenders through sheer numbers alone. Nothing worked. Daniel fought alongside his people through all of it. He took wounds that should have killed him. A plasma burn across his back. A broken arm from flying debris. A deep cut across his forehead that left blood running into his eyes. Each injury hurt more than anything he had ever felt. And each injury made him clearer, faster, more determined. He finally understood what Counselor Vex had meant. The pain was not his enemy. It was his fuel. On the 9th day, the Zorathi fleet began to break. It started with the smaller ships. Their crews had watched their comrades die against an enemy that would not stop. They had seen humans continue fighting with injuries that would have killed any Zorathi. Fear spread through their ranks like a disease. One ship turned and fled. Then another. Then a dozen. Vex screamed orders over the communication channels, threatening death for any who retreated. But the fear of humans had become greater than the fear of their own commanders. By noon, the once mighty invasion fleet was in full rout. 200 warships reduced to less than 80, fleeing through hyperspace with human vessels chasing them. On the ground, the Zorathi army surrendered. 300,000 warriors had been reduced to less than 100,000. The survivors threw down their weapons and begged for mercy. Humanity had won. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every species watched the battle recordings in stunned silence. The Valaxians, who had mocked humanity's inheritance, now watched humans shrug off wounds that would have crippled their own soldiers. The Kroth, who had bragged about their invulnerability, watched human ships continue fighting while falling apart around them. No one was laughing anymore. Ambassador Vex survived the battle. He was later stripped of his rank and exiled in disgrace. The Zorathi Empire retreated from all systems near human territory and offered a formal peace treaty. 1 month after the battle, Daniel stood once again in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. The same hall where he had been humiliated. The same hall where 1,000 species had laughed at humanity's inheritance. No one was laughing now. "You all received gifts that made you powerful," Daniel said. His voice echoed through the silent chamber. Telepathy, invulnerability, energy manipulation. But those gifts came with limits. Ceilings you can never exceed. The architects gave you finished products. He paused, looking around at the gathered representatives. Ambassador Vex's replacement sat in the Zorathi section, unable to meet Daniel's eyes. They gave us something different. The ability to suffer means the ability to grow. The ability to feel pain means the ability to overcome it. Every challenge you throw at us does not weaken humanity. It makes us stronger. There is no ceiling to what we can become, because there is no limit to what we can endure. High Priestess Mira of the Valaxians spoke carefully. The battle was impressive, but it was one battle. Surely you do not expect us to believe that humans can defeat any enemy. Daniel smiled. I do not expect you to believe anything. I expect you to watch. Every time someone underestimates us, we will prove them wrong. Every time someone tries to break us, we will grow stronger. That is the gift the architects gave us. Not power, but potential. Unlimited potential. He turned to leave, then stopped at the threshold. The architects did not give us the worst inheritance. They gave us the only inheritance that matters. The capacity to rise. Again and again. Forever. He walked out of the hall without looking back. Behind him, the representatives of 100 worlds sat in silence. They had spent months laughing at humanity. Now they contemplated the terrible truth. They had finally understood. They had laughed at humans for inheriting mortality and pain. They had not realized that mortality was just another word for hunger. And hungry things never stop reaching for more. Never stop growing. Never stop fighting. The architects had known this when they created humanity. They had planted a seed that would grow without limits, adapt without restrictions, and rise without end. The galaxy was finally beginning to understand what that meant, and they were afraid. On the bridge of the Wanderer, Daniel looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were having urgent meetings about the human problem. They were drawing up plans and forming alliances and trying to figure out how to contain this strange new threat. They would fail. Not because humans were invincible, but because every attempt to stop them would only make them stronger. That was the true gift of the architects. That was what no one else could understand. Lisa Monroe joined him at the window. What happens now? Daniel smiled. Now we grow. We explore. We become more than we ever imagined we could be. And when the galaxy tries to stop us, then we thank them for the opportunity to get stronger. Lisa laughed softly. You really believe we can do this? Take on the entire galaxy? Daniel thought about the soldiers on New Providence who had fought with broken bodies and unbreakable spirits. He thought about Nancy Webb continuing to fire with one arm. He thought about every human throughout history who had been told something was impossible and had done it anyway. I do not just believe it, he said. I know it, because that is what we were made for. Not to be comfortable, not to be safe, but to struggle and grow and become something greater than we were before. The stars twinkled in the darkness, cold and distant. But to Daniel, they looked different now. They looked like destinations, challenges waiting to be overcome, opportunities for humanity to prove itself again and again. The laughter had stopped. The fear had begun. And somewhere in the ancient texts of the architects, words that had seemed like a curse now read like a prophecy to the children of Earth. We grant the full spectrum of mortal experience. We give them unfiltered sensation and the burden of finite existence. Not a burden. A gift. The gift of becoming without limits. And humanity was just getting started.